Hello, Booktube. Welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So, I'm still not getting a lot of time to record. Things have been very busy. Back in March, when most of the people I knew were not vaccinated and the weather was terrible, I had a lot of time over the weekends. But now the weather's nice and most people I know are vaccinated. My state of Connecticut actually has a state of Connecticut, I don't think I said that clearly, actually has a very high vaccination rates. So we've got a lot of activities now going on over the weekends. So it cuts into usually the time that I have to make videos. So I'm trying to get a couple videos in really quickly before we have to leave and go do things this afternoon, on this Sunday. So what I've been reading, it's been, I think, 2 weeks probably since I've done a Fresh Red Kills, so just to kind of get caught up very quickly. I did finish the read-along that Matt over at Mayberry Book Club, hopefully I'm remembering that correctly, and Steve Donahue were doing. Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited, published originally in 1945. And in my first video that I had made about this, where I think I'd read about the first half by that point, I was pretty lukewarm. The language was beautiful, and it really is. I mean, going throughout the entire book, all the way to the end, the prose is excellent. I was having a difficult time connecting to the characters, and therefore also to the story. And I was hoping that things would get better in the second half. I had made a comment that Catholicism was playing a larger role in the book, and I was worried about where it was going. And it did kind of go where I was afraid it was going, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I definitely certainly had a hard time connecting with this book. I had seen people comment, especially about the ending, about how emotionally affecting they found it, and I didn't feel bad for Charles, the main character, at all. I really didn't like him. I didn't like many of the people inside this book. And I don't have to like the people in order to like the book, but I do have to care about what's happening to them. I do have to care about the story that's surrounding these characters, and that I also just didn't connect with really at all. I went into this book blind, purposefully. I saw them announce that they were going to be doing a read-along, and I said, you know what, I joined Booktube to read new stuff, expand my horizons. So I know there's also another tag going around, Booktube made me do it, and I guess this is one of those situations. So I figured, hey, let me give it a shot. I'll go in blind. I usually end up enjoying things, and I wish I did. I wish I liked this. I'm certainly in the minority. And I'm not saying it's a bad book. I'm not denying anybody their pleasure in it or their love of it. I know that people have very strong, positive feelings about it, and that's completely fine, but it didn't hit with me at all. After I posted my first video, another booktuber, John David, he had commented a few things about Evelyn Waugh's biography. One of them, which I was aware of, that he had converted to Catholicism. The other one, he said that he was very prudish, and I had to laugh because I had just gotten done reading the part where we meet Charles's wife, and the most romantic thing he could say about her is that she has good hygiene. And we learn later on that he had reason to not really be totally affectionate towards her, but again, he's not a character that I was concerned with his happiness, honestly. So yeah, Catholicism does play a very big role in this. And it does become what I was afraid it was going to become, which is essentially a conversion narrative, which can be done right, but I didn't like the way that it was done. I guess maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit. The characters, okay, if we stick with the characters. I was not sold, or I did not find a connection really with them at all. They are so self-absorbed. They are so concerned when it comes to religious stuff with their own guilt, which of course, they call Catholic guilt for a reason. But this is a situation where every time like an incident would happen, you know, there's certain lessons that you learn in life, or that an incident will occur, and you think, okay, this is really what I should take away from that. I always felt like whatever I took away, Waugh would take the other direction in a lot of ways. Whether it be the way that certain people were depicted, how I was supposed to feel about these people, and especially with the end, this, you know, I'm gonna have to get into some spoiler territory with this, but there's this deathbed conversion that basically happens, sort of conversion, or somebody also kind of returning to a faith that they rejected, and I really didn't care for it at all. You know, I've seen somebody on their deathbed racked with Catholic guilt. And I'm not saying that lightly. This is somebody who I cared deeply about, who was a wonderful, wonderful woman. She was in her 80s. She had gotten surgery that her body couldn't support. The surgery was successful, but her organs were shutting down. So she was on her deathbed, medicated, and in the kind of delirium, quite often, that we see Lord Marchmain in at the end of this book. And Waugh has him do this kind of sort of sign of the cross. We're not sure, and I guess we're supposed to take inspiration from that because the characters do. My experience with that sort of situation was seeing somebody wake up in panics and agonizing over whether or not they were a good enough person, that they would see their husband in heaven. Those were their final days. It was racked with that sort of agonizing guilt and fear. So no, I wasn't sold on that last part. And also, you know, they're so concerned with faith, but it's also self-serving. The only character that tries to do good by other people because of her faith is Cordelia, and she goes to Spain, and I'm pretty convinced joins the fascists. Julia, one of a character that Charles falls in love with, she mentions that her younger sister Cordelia at one point goes, I'm sorry if you haven't read this, my speaking of these characters is not going to make a lot of sense, but if you have read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Cordelia was in Spain with an ambulance. So when I hear that Cordelia is with an ambulance in Spain and we're in the 1930s, I immediately started thinking, you know, the Catholic Church was largely aligned with the fascists in Spain. So is that who she went to go and join? And later on, when we see Cordelia after the Spanish Civil War is over, she talks about how the government gave her a medal for her service and everything else. So yeah, the winning side does that. So yeah, she basically joined the fascists in that conflict. Kind of messed up. But even the character of Charles, I had a difficult time connecting with. He is so enamored with the old order, you know, and the establishment. And he certainly, like earlier in the book, he helps to put down striking workers. You know, definitely helping the establishment in that respect. And of course, he wants to get into Brideshead. I mentioned this in the first video that I made about this. He's obsessed with Brideshead Manor, and I feel like he liked that more than even Sebastian. And that when Sebastian's mother chastises him and he leaves, he seems more upset that he might not get to Brideshead again, rather than they won't see family, the Brideshead family. And he almost marries Julia. He mentions how, I think he says it twice, that Sebastian, Julia's brother, was like a precursor for her. And I couldn't help but think that, you know, what if she is the precursor then to his Catholicism? Because that's what we see at the end. We see him come back in, we're back in World War II again in this epilogue. And he's at Brideshead and he talks with the nanny. And I know Steve Donahue and I think Sean Steadfast, who I entirely appreciate their videos to see their perspectives. They both were kind of optimistic in certain ways that maybe he would get back together with Julia. Maybe Sebastian isn't dead. The nanny doesn't mention Sebastian when she gives updates. I kind of assume that he's dead. And he goes then to the chapel, which is now working again, this Catholic chapel, and this is where we find out that he's converted to Catholicism. And it's it's a very, for me, underwhelming ending at that point. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to take away from this. I mean, it really just, he talks about how he's learned these ancient rites and how many people through the ages and even this chapel have experienced this. And it seems to me again that he kind of failed with Brideshead, so now he's tapping into something else that's old and established and powerful, kind of like the nobility. So I mean, it's called Brideshead Revisited, not Julia Revisited or anything like that. So anyway, I'm starting to lose my train of thought with this one a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks since I read it, so my thoughts are not entirely fresh on this. But anyway, I absolutely beautiful writing, but I can't say that I enjoyed the book in the end, and I think I'm absolutely in the minority for that. Another read-along that I did participate in that I liked a lot is Njal's Saga, the medieval Icelandic saga, that I had said in the last video that I was really enjoying, and finished this, and yeah, this was fun. I think I only read about the first fourth in the last video. So since then, I'm not recounting the whole plot, but we did see Gunnar and his death, and that was a glorious last stand. He has this dog named Sam with him that at one point he calls him his foster child, and I thought that was a terrific little thing. They do refer to Gunnar's weapon as a halberd, and that's very, I think, actually anachronistic, and I'm wondering if that's a translation thing, or if that's something that the original writer, who was writing a couple hundred years after these events were supposedly taking place, or fictionalized, if he was writing anachronistically, because they didn't really have halberds back in Gunnar's time, which is, you think of like a Swiss halberd, it's like the axe with the spear on there. He probably would have had more of what we call a glaive, a spear with like a long spear point for slashing, maybe even like single-edged. So that's really what we should picture, I think, Gunnar with, not a Swiss halberd running around. But anyway, he kills people like an 80s action hero. I mean, he flings their bodies around, and they have all these great one-liners, and it's terrific. And then we have this this conversion of Iceland, where they go from being pagan to Christian, and it's funny. And Steve Zahn, who had mentioned it, I definitely picked up on it as well, that this is not about salvation. It's not about the passion of Christ or anything like that. This is purely about my God can beat up your God, and it's not even that your religion is untrue, right? It's not that Christianity is real and paganism is not. That's not what's going on here. It's that my God is just more powerful than your pagan gods. And one of the things that I have the Robert Cook translation that he says is that this is not a story that is, I guess, sometimes made out to be, as like everything changes after Christianity comes in. He says, no, it's like, and it's true. It doesn't. They kind of say different gods at that point, but they're still killing each other. Their morality hasn't really changed at all. Their life is still the same, and blood feuds are still entirely out of control. And that's really kind of what we end up seeing. We see Njal. This is also known as the Saga of Burnt Njal. So Njal dies in his house, burned alive with his wife, with his, I think like a foster grandchild maybe or something, and other members of the household, his older son, Skarpheden. And that's a moving scene, actually, when they die. It's very effective, the way that it's told, and finding the bodies afterwards. And one of the people who escapes that fire is Kari. And he basically goes on this revenge narrative, which is fun in a lot of ways. We see somebody's head cut off, but they're still counting because they were counting originally. We see teeth fall out at one point earlier in the saga, with I think somebody's head getting split down the top by an axe, and the molars fall out, and then later on, I think during the burning, somebody throws a molar at an attacker, and the attacker like falls down. I might be remembering that wrong, or I read it wrong, but it's often funny at certain parts. And then towards the end of the book, you have this very long section where they're going through all these legal maneuverings at the all thing. And at first I was a little bit worried that, is this what the rest of this book is going to be about? But I think it was kind of meant to demonstrate how law had no longer become justice. It became about, who knows what obscure rule over somebody else, and justice is no longer served. And when it's determined, and they know that justice is definitely not being served, we have a war occur. And things, of course, continually escalate. Lots of good killings in this. And Carrie has a great quote in here. He says, men slain only with words tend to live a long life. And I thought that one was pretty great. The women who played such a large role in the first half of the book do pretty much disappear in the second half for the most part. But yeah, I really enjoyed Njal Saga. And definitely look forward to next year's Sagalong. I'll certainly take part. The only thing that, when I started reading after that, I did begin reading The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. About halfway through so far. And this is a kind of grimdark fantasy. I've been wanting to read more fantasy, so I'm getting into this. Steve over at Steve Talks About Books and Stuff. I'm hoping I'm remembering your channel name right. He's doing a read-along this month of this, so I decided I would participate. And really, this is a grimdark fantasy based upon medieval China, but the actual story is really takes inspiration from the Second Sino-Japanese War between Japan and China. And I read The Rape of Nanking earlier this year, so I think I know what to expect out of this. And I'm enjoying it so far. It's good. It's a good story. Some of the dialogue I get a little bit, it's some of the one-liners they have back and forth at each other. The dialogue isn't always my favorite in this, but otherwise I'm interested in the world, and I'm certainly curious to see where it's going. She certainly took her time in the first part of this book to build up the character, so maybe by the time I do my next Fresh Red Kills, I'll have it all done. But anyway, that's what I read and what I am reading. All right, so finished Brideshead Revisited, finished Njal Saga, now I'm reading The Poppy War. Thanks, Booktube.